Well, hello there and welcome to my first ever tutorial. This is my first time making voiceover tutorial and also the first time me trying to explain something to someone through the internet, so please be patient with me. Really quick introduction. My name is Mege-Ythier. I'm a French VFX artist. I've been working in video games industry for more or less 6 years, and I'm currently based in Finland. If you want to check more of my stuff, I will put my ArtStation in the link below. Today, I will try to explain you how I made this effect. So, I will show you this one. This is a recreation of Durandal Ultimate that I'm gonna show you on the side. So get it right. This is the counter. Okay. So here you can see my effect. It's pretty okay, I guess. And I will put the one that you know on the side as a reference. This is Valkyrie Gloria Ultimate from Honkai Impact 3rd. So, of course, a little disclaimer, this is, as you can see, not a one-on-one replication. This is more like an interpretation, if I may say. It's not a one-on-one copy. And also, it's not a proper tutorial, it's more like a walkthrough. I didn't record from start to finish, and I will be speeding things up. Because I spent a couple of days doing that, mostly weekend. I will be using Blender to model, Photoshop to texture, and put everything into Unreal and try to stick to a non-realistic style for the VFX. Let's go. Okay, step one, the ref, the concept. I usually do this part on paper, so I just recorded myself doing it quickly in Photoshop. It took something like 20 minutes. And I got my video reference next to me, and I'm dissecting it, and I'm trying to break down the movement into key points, like a comic, as you can see right now. I'm drawing some comics. When it's done, I have an idea of basically, you will see like right now when it's finished, I will have an idea of how many meshes I will need, how many meshes I can reuse, and it kind of works as a listing. So I actually can check like, okay, case 1, I will need that amount of meshes, and it can be reused in case number 3 and 4. It's actually pretty a good tool. I like to use this kind of technique when I'm doing VFX. So step number 2, the modeling. The non-photorealistic style kind of require an heavy uses of meshes in particle. It's kind of cool because it will help us setting up the scale, the timing, and the color way more easier than just using some billboard. I will show you later how it translates. Here you can see me modeling some cracks that I painted in Photoshop. What's important to remember, it's not a Blender tutorial. I'm just like speeding things up really quickly, and this is the lineup, the entire meshes that I will be using for this effect. So some rocks, some circles and stuff, and what's important right now are the UVs. Again, the UV will make sense in the VFX sense more than a pure 3D modeler sense. So I kept all the mesh, as you can see there, except the rocks. I add them some outline, and I can show you how I did that later. And I basically merged their UVs so they can share only one texture. Step number 3, the animation. I'm trying to keep the overall walkthrough quite fast because, of course, the funny stuff and the fancy stuff to watch is towards the end. So I'm trying not to bore you. Animation, back to the topic. It's quite important in this context because it will hold the VFX, like literally we're gonna plug the VFX onto the animation in Unreal. So here I am prepping the scene, creating some enemies with some capsules, and I just created quickly a rig with just like 1 bones per character / enemy, and everything under root bone. And here I am with some animation already pretty much done, and some finishing and polishing touch. I've got some notion of animation that I can do stuff that I'm not totally shameful about, so it's gonna do the trick for now. But if animations cause you trouble, here's some tips. You can definitely use Mixamo animation. So just go on Mixamo website, you just need an Adobe account, and then you can download rigs and animation. Or, this is something that I plan to do for a long time right now, but why not contacting directly an animator and ask him if he got some leftover animation that he can share with you, so you can use them as a support for VFX. So this way you can make a friend also. Okay, step number 4, the blockout. Let's first import everything that we got. We got our mesh, we got our animation, we got everything into Unreal. I set up my scene with a simple sky sphere and a simple sunlight. The look of the scene is really up to you. I will suggest you something simple and kind of monochromatic, so the viewer can actually focus on the effect. I transform my skeletal mesh into a blueprint, so I can attach stuff like the spare and plug some animation by default, but it's absolutely not mandatory. And about the blockout, so I start by creating particle finally. So the very start particle that I'm doing, as you've seen, is really rough. I'm using the meshes that I did. I'm just placing them without any animation like up and down. It needs just to be there, and the time needs to be good. And I'm using very simple material with the simple flat colors, so you can see basically when we are showing this. When I finish my blockout, this is how it looks. As you can see, it's just meshes. They just appear and disappear. There is absolutely a very minimal amount of animation just to make the thing understandable. But this is my base work. When I've got that done, basically this is just a matter of finishing touches at this point. So this is the most important part, the blockout. Okay, step number 5 and last step, you polish, and basically it's done. So it is draw the rest of the freaking hole. Do not worry though, we are actually inside Unreal, we are live. Hello. So we're gonna just stop and we are gonna actually see how it's done. I realized that the first part has been really quick, and so we can actually allocate a little bit more time into understanding what's happening right now. So first, let's check out the scene. So here is the scene, and here is how it's worked, how it's built. So it's I added a sky sphere, which is basically a huge sphere with inverted normal. I think you can invert it, the normal over here into rendering. Oh, was it in the material? Reverse culling into lighting. Reverse culling, so you can invert the culling method, not normal though. You apply a material on top of it, you put it emissive, and then you have a pretty skybox. Light Studios, which is basically just a sun light that I matched with the skylight moon, and some fog, and of course a post-process and some reflection capture that are not really interesting. But this is the setup, this is the scene. Again, try to keep it kind of really simple. I went for something blue so it could actually help with the flaming effect of my effect. Plop, plop, plop. the skeletal mesh that I turned into a blueprint. So here how it works. So this is my skeletal mesh. I plugged by default the animation that I want to use into looping, and I also imported the spear that in the construction script I attached to a specific bone. So that's it for the blueprint, pretty simple. And speaking about socket, here's the animation. Oof, that's bright. Let's just remove a little bit the bloom and eye adaptation and tone mapper. That's a little bit better. Here is my animation. I will slow it down. I created three notification by just right-click, add notify blade particle effect. The first one will be the first impact. The second one will be attached and would be the full charged, and the third one would be the explosion. So this is the first one. This is the settings. Just like play a little bit with the location offset in this case. This is the second one, the full charge over here. This one is attached to a socket. So again, socket, basically I just selected the bone and I just add socket, and then I can have my bone spare socket that is attached, and that will follow actually my bone. And my third one, my explosion, is the same, not attached, this one, and just playing with the location offset. So this is it for the setup. Let's take a look at the VFX, shall we? So here are the three VFX that I'm using. The first one, the AOE, the build-up, the spare full charge, and the explosion. Let's take a look first at the full charge. So this is how it looks, like with all those little emitters activated. Okay, so for you actually I would just like isolate them and activate them one by one so you can actually understand the process. So it starts pretty simple with a simple glow. It's attached, so the required, I actually use the lockout space to be attached to the spare. I'm gonna stop with that. It grows over a lifetime. In the material is you can use basically a simple texture. I use a radial gradient exponential to keep it procedural, sorry. Then we introduce the fire. We introduce the fire trail, so nothing really happened over here. For that you need to go back into the animation. And I'm gonna slow down the animation again, and then you can see basically the trail. So the trail is using, I can show you the texture and the material that I'm using. So that it is using a sprite sheet or flipbook, whatever you want to call it, that I just painted in Photoshop. It's using spawn per unit, so basically the more it moves, the more it creates. I mean, it spawns particle along a trajectory, and the sub-image index to actually control the animation along lifetime. And then the other ones is kind of a classic, a lifetime, a color of a lifetime with some kind of a white to reddish color, size by life, some rotation and rotation rate. Pretty simple. The second one and the third ones, those are the same, are fire, the flamethrower front and back, yeah, naming convention. As you can see, many of their nodes are instantiated. Only the velocity cone is different, so one is going forward, the other one backward. I animated, yeah, here you can see basically this is the spawn that I animate, so a lot of particle at the beginning and then it fades like less particle towards the end, so it creates this burst effect. Nothing really fancy again over there, using the same texture as the fire trail. Then we reach the, then we reach the spare. Oh, I need to stop with that. This one is actually quite interesting. I can definitely show you something a little tip that I use on this one. So this one is really simple. I'm just using a mesh that I modeled in Blender. Nothing really fancy. The material is, I'm sorry, the material is over here. The material is a simple white color with some emission power on the glow. So it's the same that we had previously with the Blockout material, kind of. Mistake. And this is what's interesting. So I wanted to have this jiggly effect, this like pulsating effect, but I also wanted to have this size by life. So it grows and then it reaches a point when it's at full length, but I also wanted to have on top this effect, kind of blah 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 blobby effect. So you can definitely reach that effect with simply animating the size by life. I can actually show you how the size by life is made. Oh, it's just like so small. Yep. So it's just like growing. But then I have the size scale on top of it. So you can definitely, that's the point. You can use two nodes controlling the size on top of each other. One would be like a primary animation and the second one would be like the complementary animation. So you actually reach interesting animation more easily. So you can actually, and it's more practical to modify later. So it's a little tip, interesting tip to have. Then we have the circles. So the circles, it's also like quite wrongly named, but whatever. I'm gonna activate the other so you can see the progression over here. Okay, boom. So the circles are also meshes particle. So those are the meshes that I use. This one and the same one which is tapered at the end over here. And their material is over here, using some erosion material on top of it, and some of them actually are just rotating, some of them don't. And this is, I can show you the material. This is the material that I use with some erosion texture on top. So you can see basically what it happens when I erode it. I plug the opacity into this mask erosion. So it will kind of fade out with this erosion. And the same with the circles, and the end, it's basically just the embers. So no fire would be complete without embers. So those ones are actually quite the same one as the glow, using the same texture and same material. I mean, over here, so it's the simple dot, except that it spawns something like 50 of them, and the size is way more smaller than the glow, of course. And I use an orbit with some uniform values, some random values to make them orbit around. So this is it. So this is the first effect. So effect number 2, let's do the explosion. So as you can see, the explosion, there is a little bit more emitters, but it's not that much more complex. I'm gonna do, so this is how it looks with everything combined. So we start again at the beginning by soloing out. So those two works in tandem. They are the pre-impact spheres and God rays. So as their name suggests, this is the little build-up into the explosion. This is the little before the big boom, kinda. I'm using mesh data. So these are the mesh. Yeah, by the way, this one is the dome that I'm using for the main explosion. And this one is just like a simple cone that I modeled in Blender, just for the God rays. Side note, you can definitely use Billboard for that, and it will be better to use Billboard, so just texture. I just wanted to keep the 3D effect kind of onto that. Then we're gonna, next one is the circle. So it's the same circle that I've been using in the spare. Will not do it. Except that the, as you can see, the material now got this little big extension, which is exactly the same one as before, except that the tiling is different. So this one is tiled differently, so it's a little bit bigger. Duh. But exactly the same as the one in the spare. The opacity over lifetime will control actually how the circle will fade out. Here we got some, those are some little bonus that I will show you later. Then we reach the core effect, so the sphere, boom, the big one. So this is, again, did with just like a simple dome. As you can see, like I cut the down part of it because I don't really need it. And plus it gave me a little bit more space for the UV and the texture. Just spawning once, growing over lifetime. As you can see, there is a dynamic that I can show you. It's pretty cool. That is actually tied to the material that I'm using. It is over, I'm sorry, over here. So this is the mask offset that I was talking a little bit earlier. This is what happened when you modify the opacity. And I also control through a dynamic parameter in the material that I again will show you later. I'll control the texture scrolling for both basically the texture and the erosion texture. So for example, in this case, if I remove all the curves and I just show the dynamics. So this one from the back, I think it's the, yes, this one is the erosion, so going up or going down. I don't know if you actually see the difference. You actually will see the difference over here now. Okay, so actually it actually kind of works better than previously. I don't know what you think about it. I'm gonna leave it like this. It's pretty cool. And then I'm gonna auto this. Puff, puff. And auto this one. So it's gonna be like boom, and then it fades, kind of, it stopped moving. Yeah, I kind of prefer this direction. Anyway, so this is, I control that with the dynamic parameter. It's inside the material. Then we reach the splash. So the splash are those little whitish effect next to it. Those are the same than the circle per se, except that the mesh itself is just a quarter of the circle, but it's the same. I can show you the material for that. So I can show you that on the cube maybe. So this is the texture that I use, and this is the mask that I use. So if you mask offset zoom, so this is how it will disappear. Very nice. I use a dynamic for a slight UV panning. Then we have those three sisters over here, those black string sisters. 1, 2, 3. So black string, bottom, middles, and tops are the. Can change slightly the background color so you can see them. Well, yeah, okay, 1, 2, 3 strings that circles that you can see are like at the top of the explosion. I'm using, all of them are actually instantiates, so they are quite the same, only their size and their location change. I'm using this mesh painted in black that I spawn along a direction with some rotation, so it creates the sphere, I mean the circle, sorry. This one is pretty simple. Those are the little stuff that we can add when we got everything. That's a little bonus. And then we got the pebbles. The pebble family, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can see the pebbles, boom, exploding. And they are actually, those are the location that actually creates the pebble. And they will be actually tied to the next effect that I will show you later. But waiting for that, I can show you the mesh. So those are really simple mesh that I modeled that in Blender with some UV saying that at least one face would be orange, as in the reference. I think this pebble 1, pebble 1, pebble 2. So this is the second variant. Okay, and this is how it looks. Okay, pretty nice. They got collision, so it means that when the explosion appear, oh, it's gonna be boom. Okay, so when the explosion appear, actually they just collide with the wall. I mean the wall, the word. Don't need this one anymore. And yes, as I was talking earlier, the little bonus, like those two little thingy, those were trails that I tried to make, but I didn't quite like the effect in the word. So this is how they look, like at first. Here you can see it, for example, like in the animator, boing, boom, and then you can see, for example, the trails over here. I'm gonna just like put the normal speed, and waiting for that, we're gonna basically check the other. So I didn't really like that, I just like disabled them by default. Okay, so now let's check at the third, and I think this one is the more complex and third effect. Let's go. So the third one, and maybe the most complex, the impact. So this is how it looks, and it's actually a two-time. It's an effect that works in 2 times. So the first time and then the second time incoming. So I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to show you how it works again, soloing out. So the first effect is an aura that I just added. So when the zoom, when during the first movement, when the spare reached the ground, this is a small aura of heat or whatever that follows along. So this is the mesh, this is how it works. This is just a texture that is panning along this one. And this is the material that I use. So here you can see, maybe on a, yeah. And I'm using the panning texture on this mesh. So I use a dynamic for that. It was the same technique as the explosion, for example. Then we have the circle dust. So it's the same circle again than the true previous one. This one is more impactful and it spins, but it's exactly the same as the other ones. Then we have the cracks in 2D. So we have the first one, which is more like, I can show you so it's a mesh, and I'm using just a plane, so it's a simple quad by default. And this is the texture that is applied onto it, a texture that I painted on Photoshop. So it's just growing over lifetime, and it got, I'm sorry, I just closed the material, but it got an erosion mask. So this is how it looks, for example, when these erosion happen. So it's not, so it's just a fade out, but not really a uniform fade out. Then the same, exactly the same one, but with a different texture. So this is the texture for the cracks. So this one is more defined, definitely. So both of them are black. Duh. I made 2 effects because I wanted one to last a little bit longer than the other. That's all. Then we reach one that is actually interesting, the crack in 3D. So the cracks in 3D, as you will see right now, boom. So this is this bulky part over here. It's a mesh that I've been modeling in Blender. I will just isolate this one so you will actually understand the thing better. I've been using the cracks that I've been modeling in the first part of the video, and I just create the negative space around it. I added some thickness, and basically I animated a little bit the scale and the position in the effect. And if I remove the isolate, this is just the outline. here you can see how I animate it. So there is a direct location. So the direct location I will show you poof, here. Yes, direct location will be used for, where is the zero? Oh, the zero is over here, sorry. Direct location will be used for the shaking effect over here. And this, oh, by the way, if you didn't actually understand, this shaking effect corresponds to the when the explosion happens and it kind of shakes the ground under it. So that's why it's in 2 times. I'm sorry I didn't actually say that earlier. And then a size by life, just that to also increase the size over lifetime. Up, but that's it. So then we have a crack glow. So that is also a mesh data. So this is how it looks. It's exactly the same crack that I've been using, and I've just extract the mesh in Photoshop. Sorry, my bad. In Blender, and just like extrude it. And we have as a texture material, we have this, which is just basically a gradient with an extra step. And we can see how it looks if I isolate it. Boom, it looks glowy. So it's just really simple, something like this. It's just the color change over lifetime. I've got a little size of a lifetime, and it actually works better if I activate also the cracks. So as you can see here, boom. So it will glow in between the cracks. Boom, boom. Okay, then we have there we have a little family of yellow emitters over here. Rocks 1, rocks 2, rocks 3, 4, and 5. So those rocks will be the, well, the rock pillar that emerge when she strikes. As you can see, again, a lot of them are instantiated, except their rotation and their location. So it means that basically I place them by hand, and I could have just used only one rock and placed them around a circle with some randomness. But as you remember the previous effect, I wanted the broken part of the rocks to at least coincide a little bit with the initial rocks. So this is why I placed them by hand. I can show you how the rocks are. So this, sorry, oh, it's not an highlight that I want, it's an isolate. So those are the rocks that I'm using. So there is actually multiple of them. I can show you a couple. It's not really useful to show them all, but they're actually showing them. So this is the initial mesh, the rock, and the rock with the outline. Okay, so those are that, and then we have the return of the fire. So the fire is exactly the same one as the one before. I reuse a lot of material and particle, and this one is actually emitted from a cylinder. I can show you how it is. Ooh, it's shaking. So it is shaking because in the, was it initial size? Yes, or initial, there is like, sorry, my bad. The initial size of the cylinder, so this one. So this is shaky because I put some randomness into the size of the cylinder. So if I just put like 250, it will not shake anymore. But if I put 250, the whole fire will start around a really sharp cylinder. So that's why I put it some randomness. So now you can see basically it's kind of and then you can see that is aligned with the velocity. So when the particle exits the cylinder, so this is the alignment velocity. They are actually facing away. They are facing along that direction. And then we have, of course, embers, because you know, I'm just like, we'll just remove the visualization for the cylinders. That's way better. Yes, and then we have the embers, because as you know, we cannot make a fire looking good without embers. And this is the whole effect. Boom, some embers inside, and then when it grows, also some embers. And this is it. I'm gonna go back into this, and now we can talk about the material, things that I've been promising to show you for a long time. So here are the material that I use, and I am a great fan of using material instances, so with the MIC over here. And I'm used basically this one is a variant, so 1.5 material for almost all of them. And I can show you a little bit how it is. So I'm gonna open this one, and why not this one after, but anyway. So this is the material that I used for the effect. It's a simplified version of the one that I use kind of professionally, if I may say. But this is how it works. So if you want to just, if you want to screenshot it, you can definitely. This is an erosion material, so I will use this erosion mask, and I will subtract from the particle color alpha this erosion mask. So basically, instead of just fading out, it will remove part of the mask slowly. And I can actually again show you how it kind of works with the example that I've been showing you previously with this little mask offset gradient over here. So this is how it works. If I change the noise texture, so to something like I can use different noise. I got different like this desolate noise. And if I play with the mask offset, you can see that this is how it works. So it's just a simple subtract. Okay. This one. So how does it work? So I've got my erosion mask, so one texture over here. I'm modifying the UV into 2 different ways. So the first one, using a dynamic parameter for the W and Z, I think. For the mask pan U and mask pan V, those 2 can be animated, and because they are append and added to the texture coordinate, they will control the panning of the texture if I want to pan from left to right or from up to down. And of course, from that texture coordinate is also multiplied by a vector 2. I'm just using RG from this vector 4. So that will actually control the tile of the mask. So I can control the tile, I can control the panning. I've got this little offset that I've been playing around to show you a little bit how it works. So I saturate to avoid that the texture will go below 0 or above 1. And I subtract the particle color alpha from that. This texture actually is the one that I used if I want to have snowflakes or whatever texture on it. So it's just black and white, and I control the panning again with the same dynamic parameter, but not the same output. So this one is a texture pan U, texture pan V. Multiplied by the particle color, so we can actually have this, for example, snowflake shape. I pass everything into a smooth step if I want these gradient, you know, like the opacity gradient to be smooth, or if I want to be sharp, so it kind of avoid the opacity mask thingy. It's pretty cool. And at this one is the end, so this is the vertex color. Just in case, for example, when I use a mesh, I can actually get the vertex color data from the mesh from here. So if the mesh itself contains color, or it contains, for example, alpha, which is actually pretty useful, I get that at the very last, and I put that everything into the opacity. So it's a surface translucent defoliate material, and that's pretty cool. So I duplicate this one and I create a variant of it, which is the one that I used for the explosion over here. So this explosion actually required me to have a texture that contains color, not just black and white. So this is the texture, and this is also the tiling if I want to be able to tile this one. And instead of multiply this texture by the alpha, I will multiply it by the color instead and plug it into the color way. But the rest is the same. And now we're gonna actually show, I'm gonna show you how I made those outline thingy. We're gonna actually hop into Blender. So here we are in Blender, and we got our little rock or whatever object you want to have an outline on. We are gonna do a technique that is called the inverted hull technique. It works well on static objects or objects that don't deform that much. There is other technique like using post-process and stuff, but in this case we're gonna need that because it's quite quick and pretty convenient. So you're gonna actually, when you finish modeling your object, you're gonna add a solidify modifier on top of it. So here we are. It basically duplicates the mesh, and we're gonna add some thickness to it. So this thickness is actually quite wrong in terms of scale, but it is okay. You do you. The thickness will actually control the thickness of the outline. And you actually have to make sure about two little thingies. So the first one would be flip normal. So you actually be sure to flip the normal. And the second would be in the material index offset. We actually for the material and not the rim, but the material. You're gonna make sure to put 1. So I say 1, but it could be something else. I'm gonna show you which one it should be. When we go in material, so material index material, if your object only has one material, which is, for example, your material from your rock, you're gonna add another one, so by plus and then typing either new or choosing the one that you want. And this one's gonna have the number 1 ID. So this one is the 0, this one is the number 1. So it means that in your modifier, you're saying that your solidify rim, it's not a rim, but your solidify mesh with the flip normal will actually have a material index of 1. So it will be the black. And if you want actually to see that into the Blender EV viewport, I just realized that you need to be into the viewport, this viewport, the display in solid mode, and you need to activate basically the back face culling. So here you can actually see how big, how thick is the outline. So you can actually control, for example, if you wanted to have it like slightly low. Oh, it's actually quite, yeah, it's 1,000 unit. So now it's like really thin, and if I scroll up, it's gonna be quite thick. So you can control the thickness with that. When you're done, you basically select your mesh, you export it, you make sure that in the geometry you got applied the modifier, or at least you applied the transform. I don't think apply transform actually works on modifier. Make sure that you apply modifier, you export, and when you go back into Unity, these are the meshes. You will import your mesh. Did I say Unity? Oh God. When you go back into Unreal will actually know that your mesh contains 2 material ID, and you will be able to basically highlight them to see which one are we talking about, the big one or the small one, and then you will be able to plug the texture that you want. This is the texture that I use, a simple surface, opaque and lit with a black emissive color, and this is how it looks. Could you stop enlightening it? And this is how it looks in Unreal. Quite big outline though. But yeah, this is it. Well, that's it. That's done. That's the end of the video. I wanna first thank you for your patience, and thank you for coping with me. I know that I ramble a lot. I've got a weird voice. I wasn't really confident when I was making this video. Speaking of this video, fun fact, it took actually almost the same time to make the video than to do the effect itself. So yeah, this is something that I'm not really comfortable doing right now. But if you like this kind of effect, I'm planning to do more fan art VFX of Honkai Impact or Genshin Impact. So if this is something that you want to see, well, consider maybe I don't know, subscribing or leaving a like or leaving a comment below. I'm not really a YouTuber or anything, but if I ever do a tutorial, I will do more like the second part of this video, which is just like dissecting something that I've already done. But as a little gift for you that actually stay to the end, I will give this effect for free. I will migrate this all those assets, and I will put the link in the description below. So thanks again, and see you next time.